out. Everybody.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lights Out. I'm your host, Josh.
And I'm your host, Austin.
And I'm the producer, Daniel.
And today we're going to be talking about whether or not murder is ever justified. And I don't say that lightly, because obviously murder's very bad.
Yeah. And we're not even talking about murder in the context of self-defense. We're not talking about murder in the context of warfare. We are talking about just straight up broad daylight shooting a man murder.
Vigilante justice.
Yeah.
In this small town in Missouri, I had never heard of this story before. I think Danny actually suggested this one a while back.
Long time ago.
Yeah, I think it was like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
How'd you hear about this?
I'll be honest. I think I just heard it on one of those like compilation YouTube documentary style videos of just like craziest criminals. And this guy popped up and I just thought it was a super interesting story.
Interesting. Yeah. This has never come across my brain ever, but this is wildly interesting. And it's technically an unsolved case to this, even to this day. And this is Ken McElroy, who was murdered by basically the whole town.
The whole town, yeah. Or at least like, an eighth of them? A sixth of the entire town was out there? Yeah.
But this guy was a monster. There's no other way to put it. He was called by locals a bunch of different names, but the one that really stuck out to me was rural terrorist.
Yeah.
Because this guy is just... I couldn't imagine having someone like this in a small town community run around doing the things that he was doing.
No.
And getting away with it, right?
Yep.
And that's the big question here.
For years.
Who's to blame at the end of the day for this happening? And was Ken McElroy's or Rex McElroy's murder justified? Well, we'll get into it. But the entire story is just absolutely mind-blowing. I mean,
we have not covered a case like
there's
this
nothing
ever.
like this that I've ever seen. So buckle up. This one's a wild ride. So we got to go all the way down south to Skidmore, Missouri. Another place I'd never heard of. Wonder how they came up with Skidmore.
Skidmore.
You skid your bike or skid your pants? Like,
or you got skid marks in your drawers?
It's like Skidmore, Missouri. Tiny, tiny town, less than a square mile in size, with never more than a population of 600 people in its entire history. So we're talking real small town. Everybody obviously knows everybody. And this was mostly a community of low-income farmers surrounded by isolated fields of grain crops. But this town's up in northwest Missouri. And the town's history has been completely overshadowed by the horrific events that have happened here. Because it's not just Ken McElroy's murder, but lots of very tragic events, such as even as recent as 2000, 2004. But in 2000, Wendy Gillenwater was stomped to death by her boyfriend. In 2001, Branson Perry mysteriously disappeared. And in 2004, Bobby Jo Stinnett was strangled to death and her unborn child was cut from her body. Just horrific crimes happening here, even years after Ken's murder. But back in the 80s, one of Skidmore's most infamous murders occurred here when a local pedophile was gunned down in the middle of town. Dozens of witnesses saw what happened, but in the years since, even up to recent days, no one has said a word. But you just don't see that happen.
Mm-mm.
Kenneth McElroy, the subject of this episode, was born into a family of poor migrant tenant farmers on June 1st, 1934, during the Great Depression. He was the 15th of 16 children. What a family. That's massive. Some report he was either 13th or 14th, but regardless, he came from a very large, poor family where resources were very slim. Obviously, Great Depression, we all know about that. But since he grew up in poverty, he developed a resentment toward anyone with money. His parents were Tony and Mabel McElroy, and when Tony was 20, he got Mabel pregnant when she was only 14 years old. Problem there.
Setting the scene a bit.
Yes. The couple often moved between Missouri and Kansas to find work that usually didn't pay very well before eventually settling down just outside the sleepy town of Skidmore. Tony was reportedly abusive to his children. He was also physically abusive to the farm animals and would force his children to abuse the animals as well. Super fucked up to be doing this, but also having your children, teaching your children to abuse animals is just equally as evil. But again, this is going to absolutely affect the children as they grow up. If you grow up abusing animals, are you going to abuse humans eventually? Or, could that escalate potentially? Kenneth, who went by Ken or Rex, grew up in a small house packed with over a dozen people. His parents were often out of the house working 10 to 12-hour days, and he just spent a lot of time outside of the house by himself. Ken often showed up to school with poor hygiene. Sometimes he was sent home for just how bad he smelled because it distracted other children. And according to his classmates, he was mean, he was aggressive, and even violent towards his peers. Sometimes he would even threaten his classmates with knives. He later dropped out of school in the 8th grade at the age of 15, and it's believed at this point in time he was mostly illiterate, so really not that much education was had, and from an early age, he really enjoyed being outside, and especially raccoon hunting was much more enjoyable to him than school. In his teens, he became a night owl, which is when most of the raccoon hunting occurred, because as we know, raccoons are more active at night, and he became accustomed to just rolling around in the dark, which when you're rolling out late at night in the dark, it's easy to get into mischief, right?
Mm-hmm.
And into his late teens and early 20s, he had developed a reputation for theft. Cattle rustling, which, if you're not familiar, stealing farm animals and cattle, as well as womanizing. Some described him as good-looking, because he had jet black hair, long sideburns, and steely blue eyes, and he stood about 6'2" tall. So not a small man by any stretch of the imagination. Seems like decent looks. I mean, if you see pictures of him, you're like, I don't know how good-looking he really is, but
maybe for the area.
Yeah. Slim pickings.
What's the Office joke? It's like, oh, you're a New York 6 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
But yeah, at 18, he married his first wife, Oleta, in 1952 in Denver, Missouri, which I confused the hell out of me.
There's a Denver in Missouri?
I guess there is.
Is this a small town?
Yeah, I think so. I was like, I did a double take because I was like, they moved all the way to Denver? But no, Denver, Missouri. And soon after, Oleta unfortunately had a stillborn baby. But at the age of 20, while working construction for his brother-in-law, Ken was injured by a steel slab that fell on top of him from 30 feet in the air. Although he was wearing a helmet, he reportedly suffered from a traumatic brain injury, which could be extremely serious, as well as muscle and nerve damage in his neck. And from then on, he experienced chronic pain. Some claim that this brain damage might explain his bizarre and violent behavior going forward. I mean, we've seen in serial killer cases and stuff that Ken isn't a serial killer, but we've seen that there's the theory that head trauma at an earlier age, you can go on to, it just affects your personality, it affects your impulses. And so this is one theory, but I
would imagine it contributed
to the
behavior. Maybe it wasn't the sole root cause per se, but
right.
I mean, 30 feet high, like
that's
think
a
about
big
that.
drop.
And it went like a couple stories high?
Went through his helmet. So pretty serious injury.
God.
Yeah. He and Oleta spent some time in Denver, Missouri, but they quickly moved back to the Skidmore area around 1955 when he started running out of money and he couldn't hold down a job. I'm sure his injury probably played into this, but in early adulthood, he was fit and somewhat handsome, looking like a young Elvis Presley ripoff, although as time went on, he would later weigh 270 pounds. And also, if you remember, he's 6'2", so he would use his massive size to intimidate and scare people around town. Meanwhile, he made a living by leasing the land on his property, and he also traded and bet on racing dogs. He was also a thief who would steal thousands of dollars worth of goods, and this included things like grain, alcohol, gasoline, antiques, and even local livestock. He even customized his truck to be able to haul heavy livestock in the back in the truck bed, and he would then pay off auction barns to sell off the stolen livestock very quickly and quietly. And since branding wasn't required in Missouri at the time, authorities struggled to pin the theft on Ken, because that's the whole idea behind branding. As a city boy, I was kind of unfamiliar with why I would always see it in the movies. I didn't really understand why they would brand cattle, but yeah, it's to be like, if it does get stolen and sold, you're like, well, who sold you this? Because that's my brand. Bada bing, bada boom.
Can't really get rid of a brand, right?
Right. So yeah, I guess Missouri wasn't really branding their cattle at this rate. So they didn't know it was Ken. And then he would also intimidate the locals so they wouldn't report him out of fear, even though they all started to catch on that he was the one stealing all the livestock. But once, he and a few of his hunting buddies beat a local rancher, Glenn Graham, so bad that the man's left eye was nearly kicked out of his head. The men then attacked the rancher's daughter, choking her and threatening to kill her. Allegedly, Ken then told the rancher that if he reported the assault, they would come back and attack his daughter again. Ken was later arrested, but they let him go because he passed a polygraph test. These days, thankfully, are like over with. It's like back in the 70s, they just polygraph test you. Oh, you're good. And that's it. Which I'm pretty sure they've studied like sadistic people and how they don't really, like sociopaths, they can totally pass a polygraph test because they're not like feeling the same emotions. It's not affecting their heart rate as it would a normal person. They don't really feel guilty. So,
ineffective.
Yeah, right. So it's crazy that they just let people off with a polygraph test, but that's what happened. And this is the first of many, many occurrences that he would be set free. But even though they could never really bring Ken to justice, besides a few days in jail at most, many local farmers and law enforcement were convinced Ken was guilty of countless crimes as time went on, but many were just too afraid to cross him. So in 1972, he was charged with rustling, which was the theft of cattle. So he hired this big city lawyer, his name is Richard McFadden from Kansas City, to represent him. Richard McFadden will be a big player in this case, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of things to say about him as this goes on, but he ended up getting this cattle rustling case dismissed, and Richard McFadden, attorney at law, would keep Ken out of jail for many, many, many years to come. According to Richard, Ken had run-ins with the law at least 3 times a year, and it's estimated that he was indicted over 20 times, but he was never brought to justice. And for years, Nottoway County would report more rustling than any other county in the state of Missouri, but they could never convict Ken. And because of his violent intimidation tactics, he was soon given the nickname the Bully of Nottoway County, and he was even called the Jesse James of Northwest Missouri.
Which I'm like, how did they not get him once? How did he get away every single time?
Not a single time.
Do we just don't have anybody competent in prosecuting here or gathering evidence? It's crazy.
I think you're onto something. I think this county.
So clearly getting the big city lawyer was a smart move for Ken because he knew clearly that this guy would be able to outwork and outmatch any prosecutor that was there.
Yeah, and he did time and again.
Austin, you want to know something disgusting?
Always.
Did you know your bed sheets, and your bed sheets in particular, is dirtier than your toilet seat?
I do know this as a fact.
It's a health hazard. And toilet seats even worse. But bed sheets actually harbor all sorts of nasty bacteria. It's kind of alarming. I never really thought about it, but it makes a lot of sense. You're laying in your filth night after night.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have anything to combat all that filth, it's going to turn real nasty fast. Well, if you're a nasty sleeper, or you sleep hot, or you're tired of peeling your skin off of your mattress every day because your sheets are just plastic at this point, then you need to check out Miracle Made Sheets, which are crafted with NASA-inspired silver-infused fabric that helps regulate your body temperature. Not only that, this antibacterial silver technology helps make your sheets stay cleaner and fresher up to 3 times longer. How about that?
That's incredible.
And they feel so good. You just want to rub yourself all over them.
Mm-hmm.
And Miracle Made takes care of the rest for you. They give you 5-star hotel sheets for a fraction of the cost, and they're ridiculously comfortable. They're smooth, they're breathable, and all that hidden bacteria gets out of there. You don't want it clogging up your pores, causing big old zits. So upgrade your sleep or give the gift a better rest Go to trymiracle.com/lightsout to try Miracle Made sheets today, and you'll save over 40%. And when you use promo code LIGHTSOUT, you'll get an extra 20% off, plus a free 3-piece towel set. How about that?
Wow, it truly is a miracle. They make an amazing gift, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk. That's trymiracle.com/lightsout, code LIGHTSOUT at checkout. And thank you to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode. Ken would then show up to the D&G Tavern in Skidmore, which was on their main street there, and he would be seen with paper bags filled with thousands of dollars in cash, and he would then pay for his beer and cigarettes with all this money. And some thought he really only did this to show off, but some thought that he was just flaunting it to the farmers that he had basically just ripped off, that he'd stolen their cattle, sold them.
This is your cow's money.
This should be your money. Yeah. Pretty vile person around town, but we're not even into the worst
No.
of it.
I mean, at this point, he's kind of just a nuisance for the ranchers because they're losing money. But then he probably is like, well, if I can steal cattle, what else can I do?
Yeah.
What else can I get away with? And beginning in his 20s, he often hung out with his hunting buddies, and he told them all that he was interested in quote-unquote young meat.
Gross.
Sometimes he would hang out around junior high playgrounds and befriend the boys just so he could get introduced to their female friends. So he's in his 20s, mind you. He even had a 13-year-old drinking buddy named Barbara. He mostly targeted poor, uneducated teenagers, and it's unknown how many times he to minors, but he had done it so often he had built a reputation within his hunting buddy's social circle, which was also allegedly filled with a bunch of other pedophiles.
Birds of a feather, right?
Mm-hmm. Ken would even impregnate several of his victims over the years, but he would often threaten or pay off the victims' parents so they wouldn't bother him with the legal troubles. He was still married to Oleta for several years until he met a 15-year-old named Sharon. After that, he divorced Oleta in 1958 and later got Sharon pregnant, while also luring a 13-year-old girl named Sally. One day, Sally turned down his sexual advances, so he beat her and threatened to kill her father. And from then on, he raped her continuously, and even forced her to move in with him and 15-year-old Sharon. Despite all of this, he and Sharon married that same year. And throughout his life, Ken would reportedly have at least 17 children with 6 people, mostly minors. And through the late 50s and early 60s, Sharon gave birth to 5 children in 1959, 61, 63, 64, and 65. Another 15-year-old named Donna gave birth to Ken's son in 1959. Another victim, Sally, gave birth to 4 children in 1961, 63, 64, and 65. But in 1964, Ken also began sexually abusing 15-year-old Alice Wood from St. Joseph, Missouri, which is about 50 miles south of Skidmore. And she would later move in with him and give birth to 3 more children in 1969, 73, and 75. During Alice's stay with him, Ken got into an altercation with her. He came home one day and found her packing her things, attempting to leave the house. And she may have just been putting her clothes away or into storage for the season, but before she could even explain anything, Ken just grabbed her by the hair and swung her into a wall. Around 1969, he began stalking a 12-year-old girl named Trina McLeod. And at this point in time, mind you, he is 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So straight up pedophile. And he was reportedly seen hanging around one of her school dances. He would then arrange to meet her before and after school, and she would skip taking the bus like she usually did. School officials later acknowledged that they had heard rumors about this, but did nothing. It's just like, oh my, that is your one job. Protect your kids. And they're like, heard a rumor. Unbelievable.
And I wonder how checked out her parents were as well, because it's like,
yeah,
she was avoiding taking the school bus home and meeting up with Ken. And I don't know, like they weren't even paying attention to what was going on.
At first, her friends described Trina more as a captive, but as time went on, Ken isolated her and wore her down until she willingly went along with him. Sometimes she would forge her mother's name on absentee notes in order to get out of class to just spend the day with Ken. She later became pregnant at the age of 14. After that, she dropped out of school and went to live with Ken and Alice. A woman named Marcia, who also lived with them briefly, soon moved out. Alice and Trina hated the living arrangements, but Ken would allegedly beat them until they complied.
Oof. So, I'm not familiar with this part of the state of Missouri. I'm not really even familiar with like more rural towns. Sorry. I'm a city boy. I was raised in the suburbs, but I wonder how normal this was, because if he's impregnating all these teenagers, right? He's them, and then they're like moving in with him, and the parents are like, "Yeah, okay." So is this like a normal thing, or is this completely like, I can't understand what's going on here, that more parents are, raising a stink about all this. They're just like, oh yeah, you impregnated her, she should go live with you.
I think it's hard to say for certain without knowing the parents, right? Like knowing what the parents are up to, because this seems like very bad parenting for one.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I just want to make
it's
sure
not as surprising as you would think.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of confused about. Was this as like repulsive to everyone else, or was this kind of normalized because even like Ken's dad, right, if you remember, impregnated his mom when she was 14. So is it just this family that's kind of weird, or is there like kind of just a odd cultural acceptance of this type of disgusting behavior?
I think it could be. Yeah, I think it could be a little bit of both. But I mean, I spent a lot of years in a rural town, and I saw some weird shit go on with just the relationships, and like a lot. There was, surprisingly, looking back, a lot more questionable relationships than you would think, of like older kids that I graduated that were still dating like high school girls and stuff. There's a lot of, just, I think because of the pool of people there, there's just less people around your age. So you see more people kind of gravitate towards dating younger people.
Yeah.
Like I remember in high school, a lot of the girls that I was maybe interested in were dating people that were already graduated in college and just older.
Yeah.
But also just weird things. Like I had one friend whose family was large, and it was all boys, and they ended up marrying all the sisters of this other family.
Wow.
Which was very bizarre, but looking back, I'm like, and I think there was some religious sort of situation going on there.
Sure.
But it was very weird. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
They just happened to all get together with all the brothers from this family.
That's odd.
And it was like his older brother was getting with the girl's younger sister.
Whoa.
It was just weird. Like weird shit goes on in small towns for sure. So
it
it doesn't completely surprise me. I mean, this is just like, where the fuck are the parents? Like, what are you doing? This is disgusting. What's going on? But
and some of them do come around and try to defend their children, but it seems like it's happening quite a lot. And
well, when you got no police around,
that's
or anybody
also,
watching, watching out for you.
Yeah. To add context to this, they like may or may not even have one marshal in Skidmore at this time. They have one like a bit later, but for X, Y, and Z reasons, which we'll get into, he quits. So they don't even have law enforcement in Skidmore. It's through Maryville, where like is, I think, the closest like law enforcement offices are in Maryville.
Office,
and I think it's even just county officers. I don't even know if it's like
most small towns don't have a PD. So like my small town didn't. It'd be the county that would come out, and you knew not to get caught by county because county would take you down.
But
they weren't around that much. So I think when law enforcement's not around, people are going to do shit.
Yeah.
And that's why you see a lot of drugs. You see a lot of shit going down in small towns, because there's just less worry of someone showing up on you versus where in the city, you're usually driving past cops almost daily. At some point you cross paths just driving, or, you see them out and about more because there's more of them as well. Versus like in a lot of these rural counties, they'll have one deputy that's got to cover like 100-mile square radius.
Yeah.
If he's out on a call 20 miles away,
3 beers deep at the tavern.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're good, right?
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. So.
Yeah. So moving on with Trina McLeod, looping back to her, she would give birth to 3 children in 1973, 76, and 78. And after giving birth to her first son, 16-year-old Trina at the time tried to flee with Alice to her mother and stepfather's property. But Ken tracked them down and forced them home at gunpoint. This is all according to Trina at the time. Reportedly, he then brutally beat Alice as punishment. He then held a gun to Trina, told her to strip, and forced her to perform various sex acts. Then he took Trina to her mother and stepfather's home while they were out of the house one day. Reportedly, he set fire to the house with a can of gasoline and shot the family dog with a rifle. The house then completely burned to the ground. 2 days later, Trina took her newborn to a doctor in Mound City, Missouri, and the doctor noticed she was acting very jumpy and frightened. So he kind of coaxed this whole story out of her about what had happened, and completely horrified, he then notified the authorities, and the child was placed in foster care. Trina was then sedated and placed in a hospital, mostly to keep her away from Ken McElroy. She was later placed in the same foster home as her baby. So by 1973, Ken was facing charges of forcible assault with a deadly weapon and arson based on Trina's account of what had happened, and he got out of jail on a $2,500 bond. Ken would then spend hours sitting in his car outside the foster home where Trina and the child were housed temporarily. And unfortunately, after the police were called, they said he was within his rights to sit there outside the house. And in hindsight, this is heavily disputed if this is legal or not, because it's unimaginable that this level of witness intimidation and stalking was allowed by law enforcement. And from what I could find in this region, this wasn't really seen as witness intimidation or stalking. It was like, oh, well, he's out on public land. He's just sitting there. He's not doing anything. It's legal. But it only got worse from here. Ken then began threatening the homeowners with ominous phone calls. He then threatened to kidnap the foster care mother's daughter and hold her hostage in exchange for Trina. He even told the mother which bus her daughter took to school. Meanwhile, Trina was riddled with fear, and she eventually left to go live with her grandmother.
Which I get, maybe turning a blind eye to just him sitting outside the foster home. But once he starts making threats, I'm going to kidnap you.
Nothing's done.
That's when you're supposed to do something.
Yep. So they were trying to do something a little bit, not effectively, but the prosecutor stacked 8 more felony sex abuse charges against Ken. And I mean, by evidence of that, he's had all these children with minors, right? And here comes his big city lawyer, Richard McFadden. He got to work, and Ken paid his lawyer $5,000 cash for every felony charge he could get dropped, and he got the trial delayed by a year. And in the meantime, Ken hatched a very sinister plan. He quietly divorced Sharon, and his lawyer then arranged for, a very quick divorce. He then got Trina's mother to sign an affidavit allowing Trina to then marry Ken. They married the exact same day that affidavit was signed, with Ken's lawyer, Richard McFadden, acting as the only witness to that marriage.
Richard actively participating in this.
Right, yeah, exactly. I know, and I can't help but think that Richard McFadden is the one that's like,
here's what you need to do.
Yeah, right. He's giving him these game plans, because I don't really think Ken is smart enough to hatch these plans. So it's most likely his lawyer. And then on top of that, all the times that he paid off the parents of the victims that he was over the years, I'm wondering if that was Richard McFadden at play as well. Like, just go throw money at him.
I would imagine so. He's definitely getting advice from somebody.
Right. And he really, it seemed like he only escalated his crimes once his hotshot lawyer was on the scene. He felt a bit more untouchable, and maybe there was some conversations back and forth about what he could get away with. I don't know. That's just me talking here, but it certainly seems that way. And Richard then called the prosecutor after this marriage happened. With a very smug voice, he told the prosecutor that the only witness to Ken's crimes was now his own wife, meaning that she would not testify against him. Technically, the trial could have gone forward, but the chances of getting the charges to stick were very slim to basically none, so all the charges against Ken were dropped. So this guy...
unreal.
Yeah.
If you've listened to this show for any period of time, whether it be a few weeks, a month, or even years, you know that we love Rocket Money. They help rocket your money to the moon and beyond.
Whoa. Nice one.
You like that?
Nice.
Rocket Money, if you're not familiar, is a personal finance app. They help you find and cancel those pesky unwanted subscriptions, and it monitors your spending, and it helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings and you can stop asking your mom for money.
I used to store all my money in cash, in my mattress, in the walls. I buried
Gold
it
bars.
out in the backyard. But no longer. Ever since I found Rocket Money, where it keeps my money safe, I've deposited all my cash into my bank accounts.
It really is a brilliant app. I use it every day. I pay for the premium version because I love it so much. But it really is the best way to organize all of your finances in one place. It has a beautiful dashboard. They have custom alerts, custom budgeting. You can even get credit monitoring. You can see your net worth. There's so many different features that are built into Rocket Money that makes it simple, easy to understand. Maybe you don't know anything about finances at all, but you're just like, you're tired of looking at zeros in your bank account. You're tired of wondering where your money went, or tired of just keeping track of all the dang subscriptions we got these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's off the charts.
Oh, my information was involved in a data breach
Not
too long ago. My full legal name and my social security number went out there. So thanks, guys. But with Rocket Money, I like how they'll flag like large transactions or suspicious behavior on your accounts. So it's really ease of mind. That's why I use it.
It's like having another set of eyes on your finances.
Yeah.
So rather than having to look through bank statements or just trying to decode all these different things that you're blasted with every day when it comes to all the accounts that you have, you can see it all in one beautiful spot. It's easy, it's simple, and it's free. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lightsout.
That's rocketmoney.com/lightsout. rocketmoney.com/lightsout.
And again, I think so much of why these things happen was location, and environment. Because, like, obviously, in most places in this country, this would not fly.
Yeah.
Even at this time period. But Ken, he's unstoppable. And he, Trina, and Alice continued living their lives together. Reportedly, at some point, Ken might have been married to Trina and Alice at the same time, even with marriage licenses in different states. They also lived there with their children, who went to school together. And some of Ken's children have claimed there was physical abuse in the home by Ken when they were growing up. By now, Ken was pushing 40 years old. He's out of shape, and he's not aging well at all. He dyed his hair black to try to look younger. He also had cheap fading tattoos that covered his body, including his own name written on his knuckles, as well as other various tattoos that said Mom, Love, Olita, Joan, and a dagger. And although he was aging, his violence and intimidation continued. On July 27, 1976, he shot his neighbor, Romaine Henry, a married man with 3 children. Romaine had heard gunfire on his property and went to investigate. Ken's truck was parked just at the edge of his property, and he had been firing off his shotgun. Ken then called Romaine a, quote, dirty son of a bitch, and accused him of being at his property earlier. Romaine denied it, but Ken still shot him in the stomach with buckshot. He then fired again, hitting him in the forehead and right cheek. And miraculously, he survived. And Ken's shotgun luckily jammed while Romaine was able to drive back to his house. His wife then raced him to the hospital, and Ken was quickly arrested. Before his trial, while on bail, he allegedly burned the judge's barn to the ground and stalked and intimidated several jury members. He also parked outside of Romaine's home at least 100 times, according to him. His lawyer, Richard McFadden, played his usual tricks, requesting a change of venue and delaying the trial as much as possible. Ken, surprise, surprise, was later acquitted even after the victim identified Ken in court as the shooter, which is what is going on here?
Come on.
Ken had gotten his hunting buddies to give him an alibi at the time of the shooting. Okay.
Wow.
He was later overheard bragging about the acquittal, saying he should have just killed Romaine. He's like, I would have gotten away with it. He was later seen open firing at Romaine's tractor while Romaine was driving it, but nothing is ever done about it. So learns nothing, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
He goes back out trying to basically kill Romaine.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And it's believed that this bizarre dispute was actually over a woman, but it's unclear. So he's just, behavior is escalating. He's just shooting people now over stupid things. And
getting away with it, like always. And on April 25th, 1980, this really marked the beginning of the end for Ken Rex McElroy. And it's weird because it all began with an argument over a piece of candy worth about 10 cents. That afternoon, a few of Ken's children stopped by the B&B grocery store in town. Ken and Trina had sent their kids into grocery shop while they waited somewhere else in town. This was like the mom and pop grocery store. Everyone shopped here. Apparently, while the kids were inside, there was a bit of confusion up at the cash register, and one of the younger children started walking out of the store with candy that hadn't been paid for. So the store clerk yelled out to get the child's attention, and the oldest sister grabbed the candy from her younger sister's hand. She broke out crying and threw the candy back on the store rack before storming out of the place. Only a few moments later, a different older sister barged into the store and told the clerk, "Nobody accuses my little sister of stealing." The altercation soon got the attention of the grocery store owners, and this was Lois and Ernest Bowenkamp. Ernest went by the name Bo. Lois was 50 years old and had been born in Skidmore, and she was known for being feisty, stubborn, and outspoken. Bo was almost 70 years old, pretty close to retirement, and he was known to be very quiet and reserved. They tried to resolve the issue at the time, but, knowing the McElroys, this only escalated. The older sister said they would never shop there again, and Lois said that the McElroys were no longer welcome in their store. About 20 minutes later, Ken and Trina showed up. Ken walked into the store wielding a pocket knife, and Trina was right behind him. He started screaming curse words at Lois and even threatened to, quote-unquote, whip her ass. Lois tried to tell Ken that his daughter was walking out of the store with candy that hadn't been purchased. No one had been accusing her of stealing. It all could have been a misunderstanding. Shockingly, Ken actually calmed down after this. He then asked for a pack of cigarettes, but the Bowenkamps stood their ground. They declined it because despite the confusion, they said their family was still banned from the store because it was just such a bizarre incident. So that evening, Ken sat in his truck right outside the store, staring inside. And when the Bowenkamps closed up for the day and headed home, they saw Ken driving past their house several times. It's a tactic that he had been doing for years at this point. Lois decided to call a deputy sheriff she knew, but the deputy sheriff told her just not to worry about him. Awesome. A few days passed without incident, but then Ken approached her and offered her $100 if she would fight Trina in a street match to try and settle the dispute. Obviously, she declined. She said no and told him how absurd the offer was. What was that old YouTube show? It was somewhere in the deep south where they would have straight up street beefs. Do you remember this?
Yeah,
is it still on?
Still real, yeah.
Street beefs. They were running this YouTube show where people who had local rural beef with each other like this would meet at this ring with chain link fences around it, and they would just fight each other. They got it all signed off and everything. But I'm wondering now if this isn't that bizarre. It might sound bizarre to me, but it's just hey, we'll offer you $100. Come fight us. We'll get this squared away and it'll be settled.
Well, maybe it's because there's no justice system in the town.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We got to resort to something
cage
here.
match style. Yeah, let's go.
Maybe that's what it was.
Honestly. The deputy sheriff did just tell them, hey, don't even sweat it. Don't worry about
this. Don't worry about it.
We're not coming out either.
Sorry, football's on. I'm not coming out to help.
Exactly. Yep. So the next day, Ken and Trina arrived outside the Bowenkamps' home to have Trina and Lois fight still, even though she declined it. Lois called the police, but Ken had a police scanner radio in his truck. So when he heard that come in, he headed home before the trooper could even arrive. Lois then asked the police about filing a complaint, but they said again, as they always did, that Ken was within his rights to be out on the public road. Seeing that local law enforcement really wasn't doing anything, Bo and Lois became paranoid and worried about Ken escalating to violence, pretty much as he always did.
So about a month after the candy incident at the B&B grocery, on May 25th, Ken and Trina were seen stalking the Bowenkamp home. Lois watched as Ken exited his vehicle with a shotgun, aimed it at the house, and fired 2 shots just above the roof. He then got back in the vehicle and left before returning a half hour later and firing off 1 more shot.
That's crazy.
Absolutely. What is going on here?
Insanity.
And then he just takes off, then comes back, is shoot another. What is going on?
Yeah, Clearly, he had just gotten away with shooting his other neighbor. So he's like, I could just do whatever. I can shoot off as many rounds as I want. I'm untouchable.
Well, Lois, she reported the incident the next morning to the Nottoway County Sheriff's Office in Maryville, face-to-face with Sheriff Roger Cronk. He said he would file a report that the county prosecutor would later review, and he then suggested that the couple should keep an eye on Ken, which she laughed at because she's like, what are you talking about? And also, Sheriff Roger Cronk lied to Lois. He didn't do jack shit after that. He didn't file nothing with anybody.
Yep. Also, this goes to show, like, hey, maybe you should keep an eye on him. Like, can't you guys figure this out?
Yeah.
I don't want to file this report.
I heard about the cage match. Just go do that. Yeah, it's unbelievable. What did these sheriffs do? What do they do?
Nothing.
2 nights later, Ken showed up at the house again and fired more shots. Even though he was clearly breaking several laws, law enforcement kept telling the Bowen camps that he was acting within his rights.
What are you talking about?
What? He's shooting at their house. What, does somebody have to die for them to do something? Like, it's unbelievable. Law enforcement would not help the family at all, and even the locals who were aware of what was happening also wouldn't help. So nobody's doing anything. Everybody's turning a blind eye to Ken. The Bowen camp's daughter, Cheryl, described it as living in constant fear. You wake up scared, you're scared all day, you go to bed scared, and then you start all over again the next day. That's what Cheryl said. Like, what kind of environment is that to grow up in?
Right.
Where you're worried about getting shot by this guy at any point in time. He's shooting at your house.
Yeah. And almost like, are the neighbors like, man, well, he just shot Romaine twice, and now he's shooting at these other people, and they're turning a blind eye. I kind of get it, because it's like local law enforcement isn't doing anything. Do I have to go out there and start risking my life to like put this psychopath down? I don't know.
That's the message you're sending when you don't send law enforcement out to deal with this.
Exactly.
People are, what person is going to just sit by and let somebody shoot at their house? Like, any of us here in this room, if somebody was coming to my house and shooting at my house and the cops were not dealing with it, I'd be taking matters into my own hands.
Yeah, there's
too.
really only one solution. There.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you have a right to defend yourself for one. So
right.
It's just crazy. It's like, but nobody's responding. Nobody's even filing reports. Like, it's just all Kenny boy at it again.
Yeah, that guy.
I don't want to deal with him. Before Ken's reign of terror on Skidmore, many in the community left their doors unlocked. It was that type of place. But as his intimidation and violence continues to escalate, many of the Skidmore residents began locking their doors and arming themselves if they weren't armed already. Sounds like this town, everybody's strapped though. Everybody's carrying.
Yeah.
On July 8th, 1980, Bo drove down to the grocery store to meet with a repairman about the store's air conditioner. It was late in the evening and the store was already closed at this point. And while Bo waited for the repairman to fix the unit, he spent this time cutting up cardboard boxes at the rear entrance. Then Ken appeared just outside near the loading bay. And it's unclear what was exchanged, but according to Bo, Ken said he wanted to fight him. Bo declined, and when he turned away from Ken and then turned back towards him, Ken had his trusty shotgun pointed at him. Bo tried to run, but Ken pulled the trigger and landed his shot. A boy nearby who had heard the gunshot found Bo on the floor covered in blood. The first officer to the scene, which now we have officers responding to the scene because somebody has been shot.
Finally, yeah.
Bruce Richards from Maryville asked Bo who had shot him, as he had been shot in the neck. But through the gurgling of blood, Bo managed to tell him, McElroy. Ken was arrested a few hours after the shooting, and he said he didn't know anything about it and requested his lawyer. The next morning, he was out on a $30,000 bond, and by that night, he and Trina are down at the D&G Tavern having a couple drinks, like nothing had happened.
Just some bastards they are.
So,
also, where is he finding this money?
That's what's crazy to me is how much theft is he doing?
Right.
That he's getting thousands upon thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, I know he was into like the racing dogs. So did he just hit it big and win a bunch of bets on the racing dogs? I don't know, because a $30,000 bond in a small rural town like this, that's a lot of money.
I don't know. Or maybe his lawyer's got connections through the bail bonds. He probably has some type of connection that's helping him out.
Yeah.
But it's also like aren't you just happy with the money? Like, just take your money and fuck off. Like, go,
man. Yeah, I don't get it.
But no, he wants to intimidate. He wants to be violent. Austin and I don't miss a meal.
Never.
Never.
I would rather die.
I'd rather add meals.
Yeah.
Forget missing a meal. I add meals to my day.
Second breakfast.
Second lunch. 11s.
Yeah,
it just goes on and on and on.
Yep.
We eat all day constantly, but the one thing that we don't do is we don't grocery shop. We don't go to the grocery store.
And what I love about Hungry Root is that you can kind of throw your groceries in the order. Like they'll curate your meals for you. But if you need a little bit extra, you want some blueberries, you want some hummus, you want yada yada, just throw it in there. It all comes a part of the order. It's awesome.
Yeah, it really is replacing grocery shopping while also having options to add meal kits to your service. So you can stock your whole pantry, your freezer, whatever you need with Hungry Root. They have over 50,000 chef-crafted recipes to choose from each week, with many ready in just 15 minutes or less. And that's not just a gimmick. You can actually make meals in 15 minutes or less with Hungry Root. You can't do that with other meal kits, which that is why we have a paying subscription at my house for Hungry Root, because we love it. It is so simple at the end of the day. And you don't want to eat something that you don't enjoy, right? You want something that tastes good, but also feels healthy, feels like quality food. Hungry Root delivers every single time. I'm a huge fan of all their sous vide protein, especially the lemon pepper sous vide half chicken.
Yes.
Is what it is so
good.
I could eat that every day.
Yeah.
It's insanely easy, it's fast, and it tastes amazing. Plus, they hold all their food to high standards. You're not going to find any crap in their food. They screen out all those additives, including high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, and preservatives. And they source only the highest quality meat and seafood with no hormones or antibiotics, which I love. And they carry tons of trusted healthy brands like Oatly, Vital Farms, Ithaca Hummus, which also I'm a huge fan of. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as we do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life.
Go to hungryroot.com/lightsout and use code lightsout. That's hungryroot.com/lightsout, code lightsout to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life.
Poor Bo spent 10 days in the hospital, but ultimately survived his injuries. Even after the assault, Ken, it wasn't over. He continued to harass and intimidate him. We actually have a clip from a 1981 interview with Bo explaining the incident. Let's take a look.
Turned around while I was looking down a double-barrel shotgun. And I thought to myself, is he going to shoot or is he just going to scare me? So I thought if he's going to shoot, I better dodge over. So I dodged over just in time to got the police in my neck. And that's all that story, because I was out the rest of the time.
In addition to Bo, Ken even harassed Tim Warren, the minister, who came to visit Bo while he was recovering from being shot. Over a threatening phone call, he told Tim to mind his own business. Ken and Trina later showed up to the minister's church with a gun, and no one else had the courage to go visit Bo while in the hospital because they feared Ken McElroy. Just
the rural terrorist.
Yep.
Ken McElroy.
Out of desperation, Lois Bowenkamp wrote letters to the governor, to the attorney general, and state legislators. She said, "Are we to live in fear for the rest of our lives? Please help us see justice done." So now you got the locals going outside of town leadership to even the state legislators.
Yeah, this is how bad it is.
Please, anybody help us. It's just crazy. Their daughter Cheryl Bowenkamp said, "We had grown up good people believing that if you did the right thing, the law would always be there for you. But we pretty much are on our own over here." Meanwhile, Ken told everyone that Bo had threatened him with a knife and he only shot him in self-defense. Bo had been holding a knife, but the knife was being used to cut up boxes at that back entrance, all those cardboard boxes of the store. And Bo was almost 70 years old. And he's just this nice, docile old man, clearly not looking for any trouble. The community knew it would have been completely out of character for Bo to try and attack a man, especially someone like Ken, who's armed with a shotgun. Why on earth would he try to go at him with a knife when he's got a shotgun?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But that's enough, which is why I think the lawyer is the one kind of planting these thoughts in Ken's head. Yeah, well, he had a knife. And he
There's your
attacked
self-defense.
you, right?
Yeah, we'll use self-defense argument, yeah.
Ken then threatened the part-time town marshal, David Dunbar. Remember, this is basically the only local law enforcement that Skidmore has at the time. And since David would possibly have to testify against Ken told him, quote, "I believe in killing any son of a bitch that tries to put me in the pen the rest of my life." He then aimed a gun at David's head, and once David got Ken to calm down and leave, he radioed the sheriff's office to tell them what had just happened. The only response he got was this: "Don't provoke him. Nothing we could do. Keep an eye on him."
What?
Right?
Don't provoke him. Nobody's provoking him. He's doing this on his own.
Yeah. He just aimed a gun at law enforcement. And they're just like, just keep an eye on him.
But we have a quote, sheriff's office saying, "Nothing we can do."
Yeah, nothing we can do.
What do you mean there's nothing we can do?
That's insane. But here's actually an interview with David in 1981 talking about this.
He said that he would believe in killing a man that wanted to put him in the pen for the rest of his life. And
were you frightened of him that night?
Yeah, I sure was. Anytime you're looking at a gun, you don't know if he's going to shoot you or what he's even thinking. He may have just been trying to scare me. But he did the job.
Well, said it was self-defense, so.
Yeah. David was essentially, like I said, the only law enforcement officer located within the town of Skidmore. And he had held that position for 6 months. But you know what? He was sick of it after this, and he quit the following Monday.
Because they ain't paying him enough to deal with this shit.
No. Then he went to go wire cable TV around him instead.
I don't blame him one bit.
No. If you're going to get a gun pointed at you and other law enforcement is going to do nothing about it, forget this. Forget this. Ken also threatened the officer who arrested him, Richard Stratton, over the phone. Richard's wife saw Ken slowly drive past their house not long after this arrest. And like always, Ken's attorney delayed the trial as much as possible. He even got a change of venue to Bethany, Missouri, which is about 75 miles east. And he finally went to trial on June 25th, 1981. And why do you think they're trying to get a change of venue? It's because every last person in Skidmore knows Ken, know that he's a bastard, and would easily convict him. And instead of using like true jury of your peers, they're like, no, it's now the jury's biased, right? They know too much about Ken, so it'll be too much of an easy conviction. We have to move way outside of the jurisdiction, way outside of town, to get people that don't know Ken so that we can manipulate them so that they don't
throw everybody in Skidmore under the bus here.
Yeah. So, as we said, Ken claimed it was all in self-defense. He even got, like always, one of his hunting friends to testify and say that she was conveniently passing along the street near their grocery store when the shooting occurred. And she claimed that Bo had lunged at Ken before he fired his gunshot. When asked why it took her 9 months to come forward with this information, she didn't have any explanation.
What's absolutely insane to me is that all of these incidents, investigations, if you want to even call it that, it's all just he said, she said. There's not one mention of them doing any sort of actual police investigation or with science, with forensics, to try and figure out what happened really, right? To get the facts straight, or even interrogate people, even bring people down to the state, down to the state. There's none of that happening.
No. And then a random witness comes out of nowhere 9 months later. She was like, no, I was there and I saw the whole thing, actually.
Yeah.
What? Insane. So he was charged with first-degree assault with a deadly weapon, which actually has a minimum of 10 years and the possibility of life in prison. But, of course, the charges were reduced to second-degree assault and the jury settled only on a 2-year sentence. His lawyer, Richard McFadden, got exactly what he wanted, a jury who did not know Ken McElroy and his disgusting, disturbing history in the town of Skidmore. None of them were aware, as far as the jury was concerned, of the long list of criminal charges, as well as the intimidating and violent behavior that Ken had exhibited for years in Skidmore. And this second-degree assault was his first conviction after an estimated 37 felony charges against him.
That is insane.
Yeah, and they still only got him on a 2-year sentence. His attorney, Richard McFadden, believed Ken would only serve 6 to 7 months. That even though he got a 2-year sentence, his lawyer's like, don't even sweat it.
Yeah.
We got these guys. Don't even sweat it. He then convinced the judge to continue Ken's bail and order him released pending a routine 25-day appeal window. So he's finding all these little technical loopholes. So this essentially meant that Ken was back on the streets of Skidmore. Only 4 days after this conviction, Ken and Trina were back inside the D&G Tavern like always. Ken carried an M1 assault rifle with a bayonet attached, and apparently the plan was to sell this rifle, according to them, but then he began telling Trina how he was going to use the weapon to finish off Bo. He even inserted a magazine and chambered a round, and a witness overheard him saying that he would shoot Bo in the head and then carve him up like a turkey with the bayonet. A retired farmer who saw what was happening, Pete Ward, left the bar in anger. He then got a group together that included his own sons and a few other locals who all agreed to protect Bo and his family at their property. Pete also informed authorities immediately of what he had seen inside the tavern, including 3 other witnesses who all signed an affidavit agreeing that they had all heard him threaten Bo's life. So here comes the county prosecutor, David Baird, only a few years out of law school. He tried to use this to revoke Ken's bail and sent him to jail immediately, but instead, the judge, the prosecutor, and Ken's lawyer agreed that he would be sent to jail in 5 days for the hearing. David Baird later admitted that he was probably too young and inexperienced as a prosecutor at the time, and that might be the most accurate thing that prosecutor ever said in his career.
He's in over his head.
Way over his head. Upset, the locals of Skidmore planned to travel all the way to Bethany for that hearing on July 10th to make sure that Ken would not be set free. But of course, the hearing was delayed 10 days because Ken's lawyer had a quote-unquote conflict. And according to his attorney, Richard McFadden, he called Ken and told him to explicitly stay out of Skidmore in the meantime. But Ken did not listen.
No, he did not. The 47-year-old violent pedophile Ken McElroy showed up on Skidmore's Elm Street on the hot Friday morning of July 10th, 1981. 60 frustrated locals, almost all men, met at the local American Legion Hall on the same street. Considering the population of the town at the time was a little over 400, this was a significant number of people. Many were angry over the bond hearing delay and concerned about the safety of the locals who had signed statements concerning the bond hearing that would potentially get Ken thrown in jail earlier. They demanded that their local sheriff, a Vietnam War veteran, Danny Estes, brief them on what they could do to defend themselves in town against Ken McElroy. Sheriff Estes and the group of men suggested something along the lines of a neighborhood watch that would specifically keep an eye on this local pest. Someone asked, "But isn't that your job, Sheriff?" The town had become clearly disillusioned with its law enforcement, so the locals decided, you know what? It's time to take matters into our own hands. Take the law into our own hands. Ken showed up in town that morning sometime before 11 a.m., parked his Chevy Silverado on Elm Street specifically to let the men of the gathering know that he was in town. And not only that, he wanted to know that he wasn't afraid of them. To stick it to the local community, Ken and Trina went into the D&G Tavern. This was just down the street from where the meeting was being held. And then Ken ordered a pack of beer, Camel cigarettes, and Rolaids. Meanwhile, word had spread to all the men at the meeting that Ken McElroy had arrived. Sheriff Estes, instead of sticking around, headed back to his office in Maryville, 15 miles north. Which this is a major point here, because some people point that maybe he left town on purpose. Maybe he knew what was about to happen.
Yep.
Maybe he was a part of it, potentially.
Yep.
Or he's just cowardly sheriff that didn't want to stick around for what could have happened and do his job. But then, about 30 of the men who had been at the Legion Hall meeting entered the D&G Tavern. Some ordered a beer or a soda. Some just entered to stare at Ken and give him dirty looks. Ken soon got the message, grabbed his 6-pack cigarettes and Rolaids, and he and Trina headed toward the door. Most of the men who were at the Legion Hall meeting followed them once they were outside. This was estimated to be about 30 to 60 people. But the exact number of witnesses is unclear. Trina then hopped into the passenger seat of Ken's Silverado, and Ken got behind the wheel. Ken looked out toward the crowd with an evil smile to taunt them. He then took out a Camel cigarette and put it between his lips, and before he could light it, 2 rifle shots rang out. Then 4 from a different direction. Others claimed several more gunshots were fired. Some of the locals dropped to the ground for cover, not exactly sure of what was going on, and a few others took off. Inside the vehicle, Trina was covered in Ken's blood, screaming, because Ken had been shot 2 times from at least 2 different firearms, including a .22 caliber and an 8mm. Trina then apparently heard a man screaming at her to stay inside the pickup or they would shoot her too. She eventually scrambled out of the truck screaming and was carried to safety by a bystander. And we have a clip of Trina talking a little bit about what she experienced.
We left the D&G and went to our pickup. And as soon as we walked out the door, everybody else walked out the door behind us. And they gathered around on my side over here, on my passenger side of the truck. He hadn't started the pickup yet. But we just sitting there. I looked at them to see what they was looking at, see if they wanted anything, and they were just staring.
High noon in Skidmore, Missouri, on a hot, dusty day last July. There's a tension, a sense of showdown in the air.
I seen the man go across the street, go to his pickup, take the gun out, and I seen him shoot it.
Soon after, Sheriff Estes got a radio call about shots being fired while he was heading back to his office up there in Maryville. When he turned around and got back to Skidmore, he found Ken McElroy dead inside of his truck. He had been shot in the back of the head, and the bullet had even blown out some of his teeth. He had also been shot in the neck and twice in the back. Ken's 13-year-old son, Juarez, later witnessed his father's body that day. Several more bullets had bored into the truck bed, the rear of the cabin, the rear windshield, and the driver's side door. Ken's 270-pound body was slumped forward with his foot on the accelerator, which had burned up the truck's engine after it just sat there and ran for almost half an hour. After the shooting, what's wild is that the whole town just went back to business as usual, back to their daily routines, like nothing had ever happened. You don't see that ever.
I don't think I've ever seen this type of case ever.
This violent outburst, and then everybody's like, all right, back to
mission accomplished.
Back to business here. In the age of AI, it is so easy to spiral down the medical rabbit hole when you're not feeling good.
Yep.
Because now we're turning to our GPT for medical
ChatGPT,
advice.
what is this lump on my nose, on my stomach, on my eyeball?
I'm very concerned about you.
Yeah.
You should probably go to the hospital right now.
Yeah.
Don't turn to GPT for medical advice. Go see a professional who went to school, paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for the training they received, and get an expert's opinion on how you should treat your issue.
In the flesh.
Yes. Well, we love the doctors, and we found great doctors, all thanks to ZocDoc, because at ZocDoc, it's free. And all you got to do is go to their app or website, and then they will help you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone that you love. You put your insurance info in, you put the type of medical professional you're looking for, and they have everything. If you need a sex therapist,
yep.
You need a podiatrist.
I have.
You need a urologist.
Gee, I've actually gone to both of those too.
They can help you find the right person.
Mm-hmm.
Someone that you will love, keyword love. And they've got real patient reviews. You can often book an appointment within 24 to 72 hours. Sometimes you can score same-day appointments. You're not going to find a faster level of service. It'd probably take you longer to call them on the phone and book the appointment than it takes to book it on ZocDoc. And that is a fact. We love it. We know you will too. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and just go to ZocDoc.com. Make sure you go /lightsout to find and instantly book a doctor you love today.
That's ZocDoc.com/lightsout, ZocDoc.com/lightsout. And thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring this message. So, following all of this, a task force of 23 officers from 6 different law enforcement agencies in Northwest Missouri was called to Skidmore. And who did they put in charge of the investigation? Sheriff Estes, the guy who was there and then left, and then the shooting happened and then came back. So even now, with 23 officers on board, law enforcement still isn't handling this appropriately, right? So to recap, this murder, it happened in broad daylight and was allegedly witnessed by possibly up to 60 people. Despite this, every potential eyewitness claimed they didn't see anything. According to Trina, some of the witnesses were only a few feet away from the truck when the shooting began, but still, not a single person came forward with more information. It was clear very early on that no one would speak to law enforcement, and it was estimated that there were anywhere from 2 to 6 shooters, but we'll most likely never know exactly how many. As adults, many of Ken's children believe that the murder was a conspiracy and was covered up by local law enforcement and the residents of Skidmore. Immediately after the killing, the task force put together a list of at least 35 people they believed were witnesses to the crime. None of them talked. A hotline was even set up, but the only people who called were from the media trying to get more information about this case. CBS then sent a news crew to the small town of Skidmore to try and figure out what happened, but still not many would speak about it. This is kind of officially my last full murder case that we're covering here, true crime case that we're covering here while I'm still here. And this quote that is coming up might be the best quote I've ever said on this show, because they interviewed the local postmaster, James Hartman, who was later subpoenaed and believed to have witnessed the crime. He said, "I did not see anything, and I don't think there was a conspiracy, but that's my opinion." He also said this: "It ain't easy to feel bad for somebody that never did no good for your town. I can't think that anyone feels any different than you would about the people who invented penicillin. Nobody tried to hang them for finding a way to kill a germ." That is one of the most poetic quotes I think I've ever come across. Nobody tried to hang them for finding a way to kill a germ, and that kind of sums up what happened in this case. David Dunbar, the former town marshal who had been threatened by Ken, said, "It's really a shame about the Silverado. That was a really nice truck."
Damn.
These people hated this guy.
Like, damn, that was a nice truck.
Yeah.
Sucks it's ruined now.
Yeah, right. Just brutal. Like, they just hated, comparing him to a germ.
Yeah.
Like, they just hated this guy's guts. But then you have Trina on the flip side, and here is what Trina had to say.
I've known him all my life, besides the 7 years I've been married with him, and he was never that way. He never caused no trouble with nobody. You know, he was a good man.
What about the bone camps?
I wasn't with him that day. You know, I couldn't answer for that. I do know it was self-defense.
So she's trying to say he's a good man. She said that Ken was a loving father and a kind husband. But if you remember, you know, there was also the charge that he burned down her parents' house, shot the family dog, harassed her outside of the foster home. So
the actions don't line up with that description.
Right. Because it's weird, then, after all this happened and Ken was shot and killed, she then denied that Ken had raped her, saying that she only accused him out of jealousy. She also denied that he burned her family's home down, saying it was caused by faulty wiring. And then basically the only other person here to defend Ken, here's his lawyer, Richard McFadden, defending him.
Ken Rex McElroy was a perfect gentleman. He was a good client.
He sure needed a lawyer an awful lot.
Yes, and I asked him about that, and he said, well, it's a set of circumstances. He says they're trying to get me, they're harassing me. I didn't do it.
But he did have a reputation for violence. He was known as the Jesse James of Northwest Missouri.
I have heard him called the Jesse James of the northwest part of Missouri. That is correct.
Well, he wasn't. So he might not have been the perfect gentleman that you just said he was.
I say only in his relationship with me. He was a fearless type person. In other words, anybody say, you can't go here, and if it's his right to go, and it wasn't a judge or somebody telling him he couldn't do it, he would go if he wanted to go.
But he was more than that. He was more than just fearless. He was harassing people.
And you know something? I have never been able to verify these allegations that he was harassing anybody.
That's exactly something a sleazy lawyer said.
Right.
Never been able to verify these
anything.
allegations.
Perfect gentleman and a great client.
Yeah, exactly. He pays me a lot of money, is what he's saying. Soon after the murder, according to several of Ken's children, their house was shot at by unidentified drive-by shooters, and one of the bullets actually almost hit one of the children. Trina and her children then went into hiding, and Ken's house was later burned to the ground. On July 20th, 6 days after Ken was buried in St. Joseph, the task force gave the Nottoway County DA, David Baird, all the evidence that they had gathered. The next day, Baird and Sheriff Estes called for a coroner's inquest with 6 jurors. I didn't really know what a coroner's inquest was, but it's basically described as a mini grand jury, but not really an official grand jury. They heard from law enforcement, Trina McElroy, and several witnesses who were at the scene of the shooting, including Postmaster James Hartman, Skidmore Mayor Steve Peter, and the D&G bartender Red Smith. In the end, no arrest warrants were issued, and it was determined that Ken, quote, died from bullets fired by a person or persons unknown. 3 weeks later, a state grand jury convened, and Trina claimed in front of both the coroner's inquest and the grand jury that she actually saw the son of the co-owner of the D&G, Del Clement, holding a long gun aimed at Ken's truck. Some of the casings from the rounds that were fired actually matched with where Trina claimed she had seen Del when the shooting occurred. Kenneth also apparently had a history with the Clement family, and the Clements were pillars of the community, and Del was a cowboy who performed in the local rodeos. He was well liked among the townspeople, and apparently he had told Ken to get out of town while he was in the D&G on the day of the murder. The Clement family had been frustrated because having Ken inside the bar was very bad for business because everyone in town hated him. When asked about this, Trina said, "My husband never caused no trouble with nobody." She continued to defend her husband despite his very long history of violence. The state grand jury ended their investigation on September 25th, and they did not indict anyone, even though Trina was adamant that Del Clement had shot her husband. All they had was Trina's testimony, since none of the other witnesses claimed to have seen anything. The U.S. Justice Department then ordered an FBI investigation, and in the winter of 1981, agents interviewed as many locals as they could. In the following year, a federal grand jury in Kansas City heard the evidence in the case. Federal grand juries often have more resources at their disposal and more power than state grand juries, and they essentially subpoenaed almost every adult in Skidmore. Apparently, there was new evidence presented, which included 3 witnesses who spoke about what they saw. And these 3 witnesses did not speak about what they saw in the state grand jury. They didn't necessarily claim they saw a shooter. It was only that they were willing to speak about that day specifically when most of the townsfolk wouldn't even talk about it. The federal investigation focused more on whether Sheriff Danny Estes was guilty of conspiracy, considering he was at the Legion Hall meeting and then left suspiciously before the murder occurred. He was also leading, if you remember, the task force in investigating the murder, which put him in a very peculiar position. In an interview, Sheriff Estes said, "I could see that since I had been there, that the impression would be that I had okayed a shooting, and I knew there was a civil rights violation. I knew the FBI was in the wings." Trina and Richard McFadden believed that the sheriff had committed a crime. Rumors even spread that during the Legion Hall meeting on the day of the murders, some of the men were discussing a price for the murder of Ken McElroy. But according to Sheriff Estes, killing Ken McElroy was not discussed at the Legion Hall meeting that day. Years after the fact, a local resident claimed that the mob that had conspired together had put most of their firearms in a van that transported them to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and disposed of them. Another firearm was thrown in a river, and these murder weapons were never recovered. Crazy rumors also suggested that Sheriff Estes waited somewhere in town out of sight instead of heading back to Maryville like he had claimed. One woman even suggested that Danny Estes was on a rooftop with a firearm aimed at Ken, and he was even the first one to shoot. In response, Sheriff Danny Estes said, "If I was going to shoot that son of a bitch, I would have got him pissing off the porch about 7 o'clock in the morning. I would have been long way away, and no one would have known it."
It's just coming from the sheriff.
This is coming from the sheriff that the federal grand jury was like kind of trying to indict.
Yeah.
And he was even willing to say, like, look, if I was going to kill this guy, because I've thought about this, I would have done it like this.
It's just hard to believe, this whole thing.
Yeah.
You don't see this ever.
No.
It's just insane. But in the end, the federal grand jury had insufficient evidence that Sheriff Estes was involved in the murder. Danny Estes would later go on to spend 20 years with the U.S. Homeland Security Department in the Protective Service Division. He passed away in 2017. And again, by the end of the federal investigation in 1982, no one was indicted. Even with 3 new potential witnesses who finally spoke about the shooting in the federal investigation, DA Baird said, "After careful consideration and evaluation, I have determined that there is not current sufficient evidence with which to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt." As for the shooting, he also said, "Not as many people participated as everybody thinks, and not as many people know." Although he would later add in an interview, "It's always possible that I'm wrong." It's like, which is it, man?
Come
Good
on.
God. It sounds like they still don't know what the hell's going on here.
Like, oh my God. So he's going, I have determined that there is not current sufficient evidence with which to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So he made that official call, and he's like, not as many people participated, blah, blah. But it's like, after saying all these things very directly, and then he's like, well, I could also be wrong about all this. I don't know.
Wrong, or are we covering up? Like, what's going on?
What is going on?
Does anybody know how to do their job? Jesus.
Good Lord.
According to DA Baird, at one point, they had a witness who was about to testify in front of a grand jury, but they quickly requested a lawyer and recanted their statement. According to Trina, someone had threatened this eyewitness into staying quiet. A few years later, in 1984, Ken's attorney, Richard McFuckface, he filed a wrongful death civil suit on behalf of Trina, who is seeking $11 million. It was filed against Sheriff, you guessed it, Danny Estes, Mayor Steve Peter, and Del Clement, and it was settled out of court. Well, for seeking $11 million, they got
nothing.
Basically nothing.
Yeah.
Enough to pay maybe attorney's fees.
Yeah.
The county paid $12,600, the city paid $2,000, and Del paid $3,000 for a total of $17,600, and no one admitted any guilt whatsoever. Trina and her children then left town and never returned. Del Clement denied shooting Ken McElroy over and over again, and in 2001 he told the media, "After 20 years of it, it might be an anniversary for you, but it's not for me. Everything I ever said about it has been said before."
I know that the local community was like really exhausted because the anniversaries of the shooting would come around, and then all the news journalists would come in and just bother everybody, even though they were
What'd you see? What'd you see?
Yeah. Nothing.
Talk.
Yeah, nothing.
In the years that have followed, some, including law enforcement and Sheriff Estes, didn't want to label the act as vigilante justice since there is no evidence of a conspiratorial plan. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but they didn't find evidence of it. But
Right.
they didn't find evidence of anything.
Yeah.
Zero.
Right.
Zero evidence ever found.
God.
So it might have been a spontaneous reaction that several people took part in. Several men might have armed themselves thinking Ken was armed and wanting to cause trouble when he came out of the D&G that day, and maybe they're just like waiting. I don't know. Either way, most people do consider it vigilantism since the locals chose to end Ken McElroy, a well-known pest, outside of the law.
Yeah.
Which
I think
makes sense.
local law enforcement also doesn't want to label it as vigilante killing because then it's like you're admitting that like this got so out of hand.
They took the law in their own
behalf.
hands. Yeah, totally. That's exactly what happened. But many still believe that the murder was justified. Even locals who believe murder was wrong could accept that something had to be done since the criminal justice system had done nothing to protect them. Local resident Mark Reinig said, "Was it good? No. Was it justified? Only because there was no justice." I like that quote. But to this day, no credible witnesses besides Trina have ever publicly accused anyone of being a shooter. Trina offered a $10,000 reward for information on the murder, but there were no takers. And it's not clear if the town banded together in silence out of mutual agreement. Was there some sort of organized activity around this? Or if some witnesses felt pressured and intimidated by locals to remain silent. Most believe it's a mix of both. But here's a 1981 interview with Lois and Bo Bowenkamp, Romaine Henry, and Minister Tim Warren, none of whom were present at the shooting.
Do you want to know who did it?
No.
Would you turn in the person who did it if you had absolute proof they did it?
No, absolutely not.
Would you, preacher?
No, I wouldn't.
Doesn't that bother your conscience a bit?
No, because there's a verse in the Old Testament that says, "Whosoever sheddeth man's blood by man, so shall his blood be shed."
Dude, pulling out Old Testament. He's like, nah.
Minister's quoting the Bible here to justify what happened. Whoa.
He's like, I'd let a killer walk.
Yeah. Man, they hated this guy's guts for good reason.
You do not see this.
No.
Ever.
Mm-mm.
But Trina expressed that even if someone was tried and convicted of the murder, she wouldn't consider it justice because it was, quote, the whole town. So she's pissed at the whole town.
Yeah.
She later signed a movie deal with the help of her lawyer, your favorite lawyer, Richard McFadden.
I like how, man, like, okay, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. Your loved one, quote unquote, is gunned down in broad daylight by an entire town. It's probably, a very traumatic experience. Would you go sign a movie deal to like get her?
You're desperate enough.
I guess.
I think Ken was her source of income, probably. So she probably had no money, nothing going.
Do you think this is more Richard McFadden getting in her ear, be like,
Yes.
hey, maybe we can recoup some money. We can make some money off of this if you need some. I think it's probably the lawyer.
And he probably needs some bills paid.
Yeah, right.
The lawyer had some outstanding invoices.
Yeah, and the $5,000 felony charge,
Yep.
that income was gone, so.
We're not exactly sure which movie deal this was referring to, but it might have been for the 1991 made-for-TV movie In Broad Daylight, which is based on the book of the same name. In 2019, there's a docuseries called No One Saw a Thing, which is, you can get it a couple places. I watched it on Sundance Now, but it's on a couple other streaming services. It's all right.
It's pretty good.
It's all right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
They
You at least
out-
get to see some more interviews and things like that. But
Yeah, I was a little annoyed they left out a lot of like the pedophile stuff. Like
Yeah.
they really didn't hammer home
how bad Ken was.
Yeah.
But in that docuseries, a local resident, Britt Small, said this. That was one mistake that they made, was that they didn't kill his wife. I would have killed his wife. I probably would have ambushed him in his driveway, and then I would have set his house on fire. And they said this on the record here.
Yeah.
So they hated both of them.
Hey, yeah. This is just a scourge on the town.
But Trina, I ended up remarrying and moved to Lebanon, Missouri, where she later died of cancer on her 55th birthday, January 24, 2012. Bo Bowenkamp died 10 years after the shooting in 1991, and Lois went on to serve on the town council of Skidmore and passed away in 2008. She believed justice was served in the killing of Ken McElroy, and also acknowledged how the criminal justice system failed to protect the town and her family. But today, many believe that Skidmore's reputation has never been the same since this vigilante killing back in 1981, and the community has been permanently changed. The town has lost almost half of its population since the 80s. Some blame the local railroad shutting down, the school closing, among a bunch of other economic failures. But with all the murders and tragedies that have followed the killing of Ken McElroy, some suspect Skidmore has now reaped what it sowed through a vigilante killing. Because if you remember at the beginning, we mentioned some of the other tragic events that have unfolded, and it just seems like this town's kind of plagued with really, really horrific things that have happened. But others haven't forgotten that Ken McElroy was a thief and a pedophile who abused women and children. He assaulted townsfolk, stalked and threatened neighbors, and aimed guns at least 2 law enforcement officers. He also shot 2 residents of Skidmore and escaped most of the consequences until he didn't. And just imagine the worst career criminal in your town, your city, your community, never facing justice, like real justice for what they've done, or real prison time for what they've done. And they feel emboldened and they feel like, I'm invincible.
Right.
and there's no law enforcement investigation, no response, like what would you do?
Right. I think we see a lot of this, but it often is just happening with the elite class, the ultra rich,
right,
constantly getting away, breaking the law, never facing consequences. But in this case, we're seeing, lower income, blue collar farmers, and how they handle it, which is vastly different. They're like, oh, if the law isn't working, we'll have to do something about it, Whereas some people are just untouchable. But in the case of Ken McElroy, I think they just all realized at the end of the day, they're like, we can't keep doing this. Even after, so his conviction, he's only getting maybe 2 years, that his lawyer was kind of convinced he would get 6 to 7 months, right? So even after a conviction, it's just like they know in the back of their mind, they're like, man, after whatever it was, 37 felony charges, he's only going to get 6. We're going to see this guy again, 2 seasons pass and he's going to be back here. And now we even have like all these violent vendettas across, multiple people and different families. I think I would love to have been a fly on the wall of that Legion Hall meeting.
To hear like what they were contemplating. Like,
yeah.
Because like, what do? It's either you get rid of the problem or you just leave town.
Right, yeah.
To get away from the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But what else do you really do? And I'm pretty sure there's a couple country songs out there about some good old small town justice.
Yeah, definitely.
Like come to our town, fuck around and find out.
Right, yeah.
And it's kind of what happened. Like Ken fucked around for too much and he finally found out.
Yeah. So I guess the big question is, do you agree? Do you think this was a justified murder? That's a big question. Let's gulp that down because you got to think about let me contact my lawyer before I say anything on microphone. I don't know.
Theoretically speaking.
Yeah, here we go.
Well, I never condone murder. I think, murder's wrong. You should never kill somebody, right? I think that at the end of the day, though, there are extenuating circumstances for certain things. This is a town. This is one of those extenuating circumstances, a special exception in my eyes of where they did the things that they were supposed to do. The citizens did what they were supposed to do. The system that's put in place by the local government to take care of issues like this absolutely failed them. So much so that the local citizens then reached out to go above their heads, request further help from the state, the governor's office, the attorney general. What else are you supposed to do at that point? And again, could they have perhaps put up with him longer and maybe eventually law enforcement would have figured it out and finally had gotten him and he would have started getting arrested, going to prison, whatever. Like, could it have ended up a different way? Absolutely. I think had they maybe waited out, maybe it would have ended up differently. He would eventually, the law would have caught up with him and maybe he would have finally been sent to prison, but maybe not. And all signs here point to, this plays out almost like some of these TV shows, right? It's like, it's kind of ironic we're covering this, but I just watched the movie Eddington.
Oh, I love that movie.
Which not, very different plots and storylines and time periods, but the town.
Yeah.
And the sheriff of the town.
Yep.
Joe Cross. This situation, like in my head when I'm listening, like going through this episode, I'm thinking back to watching that movie last night and just
small town law enforcement.
It's just different.
Yeah, it is.
And they could have done, a lot. And maybe it was, like, for all we know, maybe it was the sheriff that shot him.
Could have been.
We don't know where the hell he was. Could have been the sheriff. Could have been somebody else in law enforcement. Could they have sort of set this up and planned it in conjunction with this town hall meeting happening to make it look like it was the town, but in fact it was the sheriff that took care of the problem finally? Did
they say, hey, sheriff, get out of town, air quotes?
Yeah, exactly. I'm out of town, but really he was on a rooftop somewhere for all you know. There's a lot of different things that could have played out here.
Yeah.
But obviously you want the law to to work.
So you think it's at least understandable as long as everyone has exhausted all of the legal routes that they possibly can. You would say that it is at least you can understand why this would occur.
Well, here's the thing is like, before
he's avoiding a yes or no answer.
Before this country was founded, this is how they took care of business.
Way back. Yeah, true. Yeah.
And how is this any different? So if the government is removed from this, what they did is how they would have served justice in the 1800s, before and even then the government technically existed, but they handled it differently. They would have hung them in the town square. So I think this is just some good old fashioned justice.
Yeah.
I don't even really think it's murder per se. Maybe they could have tried him before the town, but like everybody had already experienced his crimes.
Yeah.
And so therefore this was justice served in their eyes.
I see, like, I think there's inherently a problem with vigilante justice because historically when we see this, especially happening in the US, we're lynching people of color. We're lynching, people that you get a mob together.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's out of control. You're doing horrific things to people, right? It's weird in this case where we can see and we can actually go and track all of the injustices and almost, without a shadow of a doubt, we can look at Ken McElroy and say, do you know what? Yeah, this guy was a complete bastard and maybe what happened here was totally understandable. But I think that's why this case is such an outlier, because when we have historically seen vigilante justice,
it's not
it's
good.
Messy, right. It's wrong a lot of the time. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily a proponent of vigilante justice because I think it's always the people power trip. People take their own biases and push them on people who they think is guilty. It often gets so far out of control. And I think the Ken McElroy case is a 1 in a gajillion case here that they did get the right guy in the end. And it's kind of cool because you kind of want to root for the town a little bit.
The guy's a pedophile, so fuck him.
Right, exactly.
Like, he's a danger to society. The systems in place aren't going to take care of the issue.
Yeah.
So fuck him if he's not going to leave. Again, like, we don't know what was said at the town hall. Were they considering other options? Could they have gone to Ken and be like, you have 5 days to get the hell out of town or we're going to fucking kill you?
Yeah.
Like, collectively as a group, could they have gone about it that way? There's a lot of ways because the way that it plays out does just feel like murder.
Yeah.
Like somebody murdered him.
Straight up. Yeah.
But I think there's probably more to this story that hasn't been told. And there were conversations that were had. And again, maybe the sheriff's office was even involved in this quote unquote murder that it would make even more sense to us to be like, oh, okay. Sheriff signed off on it. They were like, he'll never get convicted. His lawyer will get him out. So let's all come together and agree that we just take him out.
Yeah.
And could there have been a more humane way, a different way to do it instead of the way that they did? There's a million other things that you could say that they could have done differently.
It's very Old West, right? You hang them and you put them in the town square and then you put a sign, this is what we do to pedophiles or whatever.
Right, right.
I once was in Denver airport. I was going back to Michigan a few months back and I was waiting to board my plane. So I kind of got out and I was people watching as people were going by. And this big, huge dad in this t-shirt, it took me by surprise because I kind of looked up from my phone for a second and this big dad with his kids, he had like maybe 4 kids around him. He was wearing this t-shirt and it was Mickey Mouse, like old school Mickey Mouse, like Steamboat Mickey with an AR-15. And the t-shirt just said, kill your local pedophile. I was like, that is
kind of hard.
That is the craziest t-shirt I've ever seen.
To wear at the airport too?
Honestly,
like, damn,
dude,
send a message.
I honestly guffawed out. Like I was so shocked by seeing that.
I'm sure a lot of people were like.
I was like, holy hell, dude, that is sick. I couldn't believe that I saw that guy just walking around in the terminal, just walking by everything. But at the same point in the back of my head, I was like, that is awesome. That's so
well,
sick.
In the light of recent news, I think
most
of us and most people in this country are leaning more towards that fucking line of thinking.
Especially in this case of Jeffrey Epstein. We're seeing a guy getting away basically scot-free, right?
Yeah.
Time and again over the years. we all can understand the frustration. Yeah. I'm glad you looped it back around to that.
Like that?
How
Yeah.
could you not?
No, it's I mean, here we are. That was 1980. Now here we are.
Yeah.
2025, 2026. And it's like,
and it's happening at like a very high,
right,
systematic level with a lot of powerful people, you know,
creating the conversation of, is it time that we get together as the people and do something about this? Like, shit, like, I think all of us are tired of hearing about these fucking pedophiles.
Yeah.
And they need to start facing some serious consequences, and we need to hold the people responsible who are protecting these sick fucks accountable as well.
Because law enforcement doesn't. We're seeing this at the highest level.
No, Cash Patel can fucking rot in hell for all, I mean, piece of shit. I mean, and maybe he's being told by somebody else we don't know about to keep this all covered up. But, you know, don't want to get political here, but like,
I mean, how can you not draw the lines?
Insane.
Yeah, this is clearly, I mean, this is, the Jeffrey Epstein is Ken McElroy on an insane level.
Like, makes this look like
nothing.
Innocent.
Yeah,
like, this is like an innocent, like a little play that played out. Or, you know, it's like, fuck Ken McElroy. He got what he deserved. You know, when the legal system does not fucking do its job, what the fuck do you do?
What are you supposed to do?
Like, at the end of the day, we were here before these systems were in place. And how do you think they dealt with it within people, in villages, in clans, whatever you want to call it, whatever type of community that existed before a government came in? They dealt with it internally. They came together. They made a decision. And how else are we here?
Yeah. And it's maybe that's a more barbaric form of system, but it's like when
maybe we need it.
Maybe
we need it.
When we set up like this system that we claim to be so much better that continues to fail us, we resort back to the barbaric systems.
Primal instincts kick in, and it's like
Lord of the Flies. Yeah. You know?
Time to you know? Time for them to kick the bucket, man. It's like when you're just just think about how many victims Ken had, how many young children and young girls and women that were affected by his evil, horrific actions, not to mention the people he just shot for virtually, it seems like no reason other than to be an asshole. I don't know. I don't know if there's anybody out there listening to this who can have the opinion other than fuck Ken McElroy.
Right, yeah.
They did what they had to do to make their community safe and protect their children. And you know what? I will stand by that. Protect the children. Fuck the pedophiles.
Yeah.
They all fucking deserve to die.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit.
He said it. He said it here first, folks. I do want to ask a little. Now, this is, I think we're moving in a little bit more of a nuanced conversation. When we talk about Trina and her children, because we're saying, okay, protect the children, right? But potentially that same mob, that angry mob, was open firing at a house with children inside. So we're
love that.
Yeah, exactly. So then we're getting,
that.
Is this what happens when people just get so riled up in like a mob-like mentality that then you start doing that? They burn their house down. They were run out of town. As much as I don't like Trina,
she is a victim.
She is a victim at the end of the day. You have to remember going back, right? But I mean, at some point, she's an adult when these things happen, but was she kind of programmed by Ken? Is that why she's saying like, no, he was such a great man because that's what he was feeding her this whole time? So she's just kind of has a, what do you call, why am I blanking
Stockholm
on it?
syndrome.
Thank you. Stockholm syndrome a bit, where she's like the only one to defend him after all of this. It's hard to not see the ramifications bleed over into like, oh yeah, also after we killed Ken, we also opened fired into this house with children inside. Something terrible could have happened there, right? This would have been a completely different story. This is a hypothetical, but it is something to consider, I think, because it's not as clean cut as like you want it to be. You kind of wish like they smoke Ken, everyone walks away, you rinse your hands, and we never talk about this again. Yet it always gets a little muddy, you know, when it comes to vigilante killings.
Which I think, if I had to guess why they did that, was they wanted her out of town.
Sure.
Because if they wanted to kill her, they would have found her and killed her, right?
Yeah.
Well, they had the opportunity.
They could have killed her right there.
Yeah, they could have just rolled up to the house, had her open the door, and shot her. But
I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, which, again, I think, like you guys said, she's obviously a victim of Ken's here. Ken had serious control over her.
Groomed from 12 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think they were trying to send a message because they didn't want her in town anymore. Because I think there's also more to that story as well. Maybe there's some things that she did later on in her life or assisted Ken with some of the things. I don't know. Or maybe they just were like, we don't want a single McElroy living within our town city limits or something.
Yeah.
And again, like the children completely innocent in this. I'm glad she took them and eventually left. And
Yeah.
That was the right
best call.
that was the right move. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, it can even then after that, they can't figure out who did it. The violence perpetuates and things could have gotten really, really bad. More people could have died that didn't need to die.
Right.
And so that's the
And if we're willing to
balance.
believe Trina, which we know she's a liar, but if we take her at her word for where she says that there was a eyewitness who was maybe going to testify that then was threatened out of it. If we take that, then the whole town is almost like conspiring against itself too, where they've all made this agreement. And it's like, if anyone steps out of line, you might be next. It just turns into like this. It's kind of eating itself at some degree. Luckily, it didn't escalate any more than that. There may have been some threats shared between neighbors, but it seemed like it maybe ended there all hush hush.
Well, when the local preachers say
on board,
he's like, I wouldn't give up the killer's name.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot.
Mm-hmm,
and again, this is such a unique situation in such a unique place that anywhere else this would have spilled over and just become, a huge disaster.
Right. That's why I think this case is one in a gajillion.
Yeah,
like I said, there's nothing else like it.
But anybody else have any other thoughts? How do you feel about this, Danny?
I do kind of feel bad for Trina. As we were talking about, she was a victim. She was groomed from 12, impregnated at 14. I feel like she stood by the man she was with because that's all she knew. So I do feel bad for her. As far as this being murder, I do think it is murder. As far as it being justified, I do think it's justified. I think any actions afterwards, like shooting at the house and burning it down, although I understand the sentiment behind it, I do disagree with it. I think it's gone a little bit too far. It's endangering the people that never were a part of the problem. Ken was the only issue. Now that he's out of the situation, I don't think there's any more retaliation that needs to be done.
Yeah, well, like how much of a threat is Trina at this point?
Exactly.
Now that Ken's gone.
She's not a threat. I think the lawyer's a threat, but...
Yeah, it's surprising nobody went after the lawyer.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Mr. McFadden.
I know, right?
Never,
that guy, absolute scumbag.
Yeah.
Sleazy.
He's kind of the biggest asshole in this whole thing.
Yeah.
He's protecting Ken when he should have done the right thing.
He's profiting off of this whole
Yeah,
this guy is profiting off of the whole town's turmoil, basically.
He gets away scot-free, lives to tell the story.
Yeah. So it's like behind every criminal like this, God, this is also probably why it's a one in a gajillion case, because it is like this small town, low income, where this hotshot lawyer comes in. I don't think we often see things like that.
No, I'm like, this town had the worst court system.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Maybe we should have shot and killed the DA as well. Kidding.
The guy, I don't even blame the DA. The DA is fresh out of law school, basically. He gets thrown into a shitstorm.
He's still like changing his diapers out at the end of every day.
He hasn't even gotten his bar exam results yet. He has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
I also wonder, like, lack of resources. There's no local law enforcement.
Yeah.
You can kind of make that excuse as well. I don't know. But
lack of training, lack of just, it's just it's like, it doesn't even exist in the United States. It's like its own little country that's going on out here, that the way they operate. And that's how a lot of small towns are. I mean, there's cases that I've dug into in Mississippi where I went and visited and I saw it firsthand. It's like the victim's family is reaching out to the attorney general for the state of Mississippi and the governor's office for help because the corruption within this small town is so rampant and so obvious that, and it's obvious to everybody that lives there. Everybody that we talk to is like, oh yeah, that's absolutely corrupt, from the sheriff to the district attorney to the judges are all in cahoots. It's like this exists in a lot of places in small town America, and you go to those places and there's usually a lot of crime, a lot of problems, And I mean, luckily, a lot of them have never gotten to this point where they're taking it into their own hands. But I bet you if I went and asked a lot of these people if they have ever thought about taking matters into their own hands, I bet you a lot of them would say, hell yeah.
Right,
I've thought about going and taking out this individual because they murdered my loved one or whatever. And the police haven't done shit. They haven't done anything. And so I think this is just a real systemic issue in our whole country and across the world too. And a lot of other places. Like, why are our systems so fucking broken?
Yeah.
Like, we need to fix this. But we don't.
Yep, we don't. And that's why kill your local pedophile. That T-shirt really resounded with me.
I've definitely seen that on a bumper sticker too.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've seen one similar. It's a kill your local heroin dealer.
Damn.
Yeah.
America.
Yep. Here we are.
I'm always curious if there's anybody out there. I know for a fact there are people out there, but people in other countries, like what do you make of this story? What do you make of the situation like this happening? Are there, like, in the United Kingdom, in Canada, is there any stories like this of vigilante justice being served, like, on this level? I'm curious.
Yeah. In the UK, is there any town of 400 people where everyone owns a firearm?
Yeah, right. True.
It's a very American
Is that a factor
thing.
here?
Yeah.
Yes. Of course it is.
Yeah.
But definitely let us know your thoughts on this one. This is a wild one. Do you think murder was justified in the killing of Ken McElroy? Let us know your thoughts below if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you are. I haven't asked for that in a while. Also, if you're not following us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit that follow button right now. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Lights Out. We'll see you guys next week. Till then, lights out, everybody.